ready to get started? Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We'll do a quick around the room as far as introductions, but we're kicking into an annual plan workshop. So me and Nigel will go to my right with Councillor Piddington.
Stu Piddington, Councillor.
Councillor Michelle Pye.
Councillor Scott Shannon.
Nigel Trainer, CEO.
Paul Cooper, GM Environmental Services and Acting GM Community Services.
Andrew Dixon, Group Manager of Infrastructure.
Stacey Scott, Councillor.
Peter Bett, Councillor.
Sally Parker, Councillor.
Ellen Booth, Councillor.
And Steph Ward, Corporate and Strategic Planner.
Stephen Doran, GM of Corporate and Communications.
Andrea Rankin, Chief Financial Officer.
Nicole Timney, GM of Property.
That's right, and thank you. And we've just got a couple of apologies. Councillor Oliver and Councillor Jackson have had to step out. We've got some other support staff in, so I'll pass over to Stephen, Andrea, to kick us in. It's all about the numbers.
Thank you for all attending today. The intention of this workshop is to, one, have a look at the forecast and sort of dig a little bit deeper, but also then just move on to what some of those implications from this year flowing on to next year, what that might look like against our long-term plan. So obviously annual plan is set as year 1 of the LTP, year 2 of the LTP. And in theory, that's, where we should go. But obviously that was set a good 18 months ago and things have changed over that time. We know a little bit more information about some of the projects around interest rates, funding, things like that. So there will be a couple of minor changes to the LTP. So today is sort of just to, as you've indicated in the past, indicated that in the long-term plan we had a forecast rates increase of 12%. You have indicated a couple of meetings ago that actually what would a decrease of that look like? Potentially under 10, 5, So what we've done is we've taken the long-term plan, we've made a couple of amendments to it that have known information, and at a very high level applied the 8 or 5, 8 and 10. What does that look like? So the first piece of paper that you have here, not the one with yellow highlighting on it, but the forecast page. So part of what you saw today was sort of majority of it, but you'll see now under other expenses that we've broken out consultants, contractors, solicitors, fees, insurance. So these are some of the ones that are forefront of your minds and items that we potentially get asked questions for all the time. So we've broken out those just at a high level, just to show overs, unders and where we think we might be at year end. So just open the floor to any questions in regards to the forecast. If you've got questions around revenue, questions around expenses, that kind of thing. So the floor's there.
I'd just add to that. So as you can see, the expenditure, we're containing it. So we're going to be 4.3 million under. Now, that's a lot of what this management team can manage, and we're doing well there. The salaries are forecast to be under, as is the finances and the other expenses. Revenue, we're doing relatively well there with the exception of the subsidies and grants, and we talked about those earlier. And a lot of those are from decisions made in terms of not doing the theatre, Royal Museum, Stadium, so forth on a faster trajectory. There's also NZTA impacting on that. So when you look at it overall, it's not too bad. There are some lessons in here, like the depreciation. We got that budget wrong, so we've got to make sure we get that right in the next year. And we're starting to go through a process of looking at the next year's budgets with each unit manager, and that process is actually quite informative. It's going quite well.
Yeah, look, I guess I'd like to start with, obviously the subsidies and grants has continually been put in there and kicked down the road and used as income, when essentially if you do something, you get it. The only thing you really know you're going to get is a percentage of that road funding. And so therefore, for me, it distorts the numbers majorly, and we continually are talking about that number not being, we're budgeting on getting it, but we don't get it. So why, anything outside roading, we should not include, and we only include it when we actually get to go to get it, if you know what I mean, and the knowing what year that we're going to claim it, if it's available. So I guess that's one thing that I think we should try and, even if we've got to have two sets of numbers, I don't know, we need to know that we're running a budget, a balanced budget for a start, and we haven't been. So we need to know clearly where we're at, and unless we peel a whole lot of stuff out so we get right down to it, we don't. I guess the other thing that concerned me was the salaries, and as I mentioned, probably around about 75% of the last rates increase actually went to salaries, which was $5 million increase on the budget. So out of that extra rates that we claimed, you're going to get the rates, and I got a feeling it went from, what did we get? We're going to get 84 million. What was it last year? Was it 72 million? Can someone tell me? Or 74 million? I think it was 74 million. So 74, so it's about 10 million. So there, 5 million. We didn't seem to talk about that. 5 of that increase that we actually charged our ratepayers, half it went to salaries. There wasn't even a murmur about it. So, and that's huge. We should not be having such dramatic increases in personnel costs.
Can I respond to that? There's two major things that have changed. One, we've brought some of the parks in-house, so you've got an increase in FTE. So therefore there's an increase in cost. Our turnover rate has dropped from an average of 12% to about 3%. So again, you've got people here that you didn't have last year. They were budgeted for. So when you look at the budget was set and we're under the budget, even though we've got a 3% turnover rate. So we're actually doing quite well there. Now, when you set the budget, that's when you should be having those conversations. But at the moment, we are within budget.
I tend to agree with the first part of Councillor Booth's comments in that, and I get the auditing process, but we're counting grants income that then gets spent on capital projects. And so in a perfect world, we should be, if we're allowing for $6 million of grant income that will get spent on capital projects, we should be aiming for a $6 million profit.
Dead right.
Yeah, and so rather than having two sets of figures, that is what we should be, because it is like counting your loan as income. It is crazy, but I get that it's audited and that's the way we need to show it, just like Councillor Booth's favourite topic, vested assets. But I'd also just like to go back to Mr Trainor's comments about depreciation, because we haven't, and I get the reasons for it, but we haven't done this well in the past, and I'm still worried that at the end of this year, we think we're trucking along for whatever we're forecasting now, and then all of a sudden we recalculate our depreciation and we've made this massive loss. It happened a couple of years ago. That just comes out of the blue that we're not prepared for. Have we resolved that problem? So your forecasted depreciation, does that include new assets and assets that are still to come before the end of the year?
So what?
Within ballpark.
So that was an estimate. So we are still going through the process of capitalisation, but by the end of March, we will have capitalised a whole lot of things. So we'll have a better idea for the next forecast, whether $4 million on top of that. The downside of the way that the budget model works is it takes the last year's numbers and doesn't take into consideration where we are from a forecast perspective.
But we must be able to override that and go,
The model
Since
at that time didn't let us.
yeah, but are we going to be doing that going forward?
Yes, we will,
So
yeah.
we get to when we set next year's annual plan, are we going, this is what we forecast depreciation at, plus we know we're going to have these
Yes.
new assets, so this is where it should be?
Yeah.
Yay.
The issue that we're going to face, once again, is the annual plan will be set prior to the end of the year. We are doing a roading valuation and a water valuation. Now, it's anybody's guess what that is going to look like. It could be 50 million, it could be an increase of 100 million.
But I get the
it could
impression
be-
that in the past, we haven't even taken a guess.
No.
And so my point is, will we go, roading might increase in value by 20% and therefore our depreciation needs to go up 20%
Yeah,
or whatever it is?
we will.
Whereas in the past, I think we haven't done anything.
No, we've let
have
the
we?
model do it, but I think it's one of those items that you can actually
Okay.
better do.
And then my other question is around interest rates. When we did the long-term plan, we had to use some ridiculous interest rates that nobody ever agreed with because they were bill rates, and that's what the auditor said. In the annual plan,
No,
are we allowed to use?
So interest
What we
rates,
think.
we could decide what we wanted to use.
I thought we could,
Yeah,
I thought they were set.
the bill rates were on the expenses.
Oh, I thought the interest rates, we had little say in. Oh, okay. But, so anyway, my question is, in this year's annual
Yeah.
plan, we can forecast based on what we know we've got locked in here.
Yes.
Okay.
So the part of this slide here has, yeah. So yes, we can. Yeah.
And actually, I did have on my other notes from the other meeting that, I thought we were doing really well on the other expenses. And the personnel budget, given, yes, I agree with Councillor Booth, it has grown and grown and grown, but we've signed that budget off, and this year I endorse what Mr Traynor said there.
Can I just note too, regarding the valuations too, that the eroding and water and drainage are on current market values, but all our other assets are still on 2005 values. And so there is, an issue there.
When are we
At some
revaluing?
stage, has to be addressed.
I remember reading that in the annual report. When are we going to address that? Because that's going to bite us in the proverbial.
We're avoiding it at the moment while we get a balanced budget. So you
Assets, and we'll just balance our budget like that.
So you're quite correct. Some of those subsidies and grants should be representing a surplus, and I've said that right from word go. And we're not there yet, so we've got a lot of work to do.
I think my point is that in the last 5 years since I've been here, we've overestimated our income and we've underestimated our expenses. It's just been continuing. It's just been so naive, quite frankly.
Councillor Booth, just to correct you, we haven't understated our expenses this time. We're on budget, so that's fine. The revenue's fine except for the timing of the grants. When we did this LTP, we hadn't made a decision on the theatre museum, so we were assuming it was going to happen. It didn't happen.
It happened the last 5 years since I've been here, so I would
but-
assume it was ever going to happen this year.
Yeah, exactly. But the decision was made not to do it.
The other comment over the last 5 years, we haven't actually had the high level of grants, etc., that we have attached to these vertical build projects. So it's been quite a different set of accounts. And so there again, I go back to our accountability that was saying, hey, SLT and anyone down need to be accountable, but we all sign off budget every year, LTP, we're all there. It's recorded, not in stone, but almost. Recorded in the cloud as well. So we all have to be accountable.
How do we get round, like NZTA are going to keep slashing under this government subsidies and, are we allowed to take a punt? And on the flip side, for income, we need to get our waste right. You know, those sort of numbers are big numbers that can blow a budget both ways. If we don't get the income, we're left out to dry, but I'm just not sure what the answer is around those things.
Yeah, well, the NZTA's funding is locked in for the next 2 years. So, but you're right, you know, government is pushing more and more onto local councils. It's a nationally competitive funding system, but basically the bucket is not growing. It's as vehicles become more fuel efficient, you know, they rely totally on petrol tax and road user charges. So, yeah, and as the vehicles get more efficient, there's less used, less income.
Yeah, the challenge again, I think, is for Canterbury, and I shared those figures with you, those that had a chance to have a look. ECAN did some really good work with the RTC around getting that data. Canterbury funding, I think no matter where in Canterbury, it's pretty consistent. You know, we're getting 5% and equity would be about 12%. So we're getting underfunded. The challenge that Andrew's highlighted is National Land Transport Plan is in place, and so we're only a year away from the conversations are currently about local body elections, or starting to. In a year's time, they're going to be about central government elections, and what local government doesn't do well is make it an issue with the people that actually Canterbury's being underfunded. So it's something that we need to challenge, and it's been the last two governments. It's been the Labor government and the current government that's underfunded roading in Canterbury. So we've got probably a year to get smart around telling our story around that underfunding, because none of that stuff hits the headlines really to the amount that it should.
So when we set the NZTA subsidy grants, the NZTA had not made their announcements. So we were taking a punt there. We knew that right from word go, and it was based on historical knowledge, and then they cut it back further than we anticipated.
That's quite correct, yeah. You know, we didn't get advised until end of August of what the funding which was going to be. So, yeah, there was certainly a shift there. But, you know, I certainly, you know, support Bowen there about our Canterbury needs to have a greater share, and I actually sit on that regional group that's working on that project at the moment. And, yeah, it's very obvious when compared to the likes of the Auckland and Wellingtons that Canterbury is not getting a share.
And sorry, just on comment on that. Unfortunately, we're going to be really careful. You know, respect the new minister, but already, you know, there's some stuff coming out. He's been given stats by central government around GDP in the south versus which population the North Island technically performs better, and so we need to really tell our story really well, because he's, I think, been armed with some of the why nots. So we need to be really armed with the why to justify expenditure down here.
It's just to go back to the Chief Executive's comments earlier, is one major problem with the council planning cycles is that NZTA always announces how much money they're giving us quite a long distance after we've set our budgets, and it's been a long-standing problem for every council in the country, and there's never really been any move to align them better. So we're not. It's an estimated guess we're taking, but at the end of the day, it can change with political views.
I was just going to add to that, the stats that astounded me in the information you shared this morning is how much this council, the percentage-wise that we spend that's not co-funded, is far, far higher than any other council in Canterbury, and I don't think the community understands. And that was agreed to maintain that level of service, which I conveniently forgot about, but the Mayor reminded me. But, you know, you look at some other councils and they do zero work that's not co-funded. Yeah. Exactly. But that will mean reducing level of service.
I mean, it's a good conversation we need to have, but challenges, you know, currently we're dealing with complaints on weeds. You know, you pull back on that. But I think we need to at least tell our story better. I don't think I would want to be in the extreme of Waimate and Mackenzie, who probably need to put some money in and are doing, you know, the least amount possible. But as I didn't give the example, but Huranui are really high with what they fund as far as unsubsidised roading as well. For that reason, that's one of their core lines of business, if you like.
Another couple of comments on this forecast that you've just given us, where you've broken down some more expenses, and one is around insurance, and we've talked for a number of years about having a strategic insurance policy, or a policy for insurance, where we self-insure a wee bit more to reduce that insurance cost. And so my question is, where are we with that, and is that still on the radar? Because it increases the risk to council, but obviously reduces costs. And then I have another question.
Thank you, Councillor Pye. We've got a paper coming up to ARC. We've got an update from Aon, who are insurers' brokers, and they're going to talk about the strategy going forward in regards to what we look at for insurance. And certainly in that paper, there is that discussion now about self-insurance and what areas do we want to look at. And is that lower valued structures or buildings, and repositioning some of our insurance. So certainly it's on the cards for a discussion.
My other question was, I'm guessing you put postage here for a reason. And is there some responsibility our own community can take on, and we just not go by post anymore?
Ideally, would love to not go by post anymore. The reason we put that there is because it is a large variance. A couple of things there: by-election in Geraldine, and the ECAN rates. Yeah. So postage has significantly gone up to post-election now.
Sorry, with that ECAN thing, surely we get something back from them.
So we'll go into discussions with them as to how much we can recover, yes.
In the by-election, does the postage not go to the election costs? Because the last report I saw, we were massively under budget on election costs. So I would have thought the postage gets coded
so
there,
that's the budget you saw at the end of the forecast is for next year's election, as there's some costs that come before the end of the financial year, and then the majority of them come. No, the postage is the major part of any election at the end of the day, and it's only getting higher as the years go by. So if they could find some alternative way of doing it, it would be very welcomed.
Where is Mr. Smith at? He isn't he doing a paper, or Mayor of Nelson? Sorry, forget his first name. Nick. Mayor Nick Smith. They're looking at alternatives for elections, aren't they? But won't be for this coming election.
Yeah, at the moment we only have post, and it's all on the council. We do recover. I mean, we recover about half of that back again from Environment Canterbury, because we run their election as well, and a little tiny chunk from the GLT. But the initial cost does land on us.
Sorry, just on ECAN, what's the situation with My Way going forward? But because I understand they're getting cuts as well in that area. Does anyone have any update on My Way, or?
I understand from inside discussions when I was there around the equity of running it for such a pittance that it needed to go up to reflect exactly what it was, and over half of it was funded by NZTA, and there's going to be issues with that. So that's going to affect their budget significantly, or they do have to start ramping it up to reflect the service that it is. And I think people are using it now to the extent where they know it's a cheap taxi and it takes you door to door. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that was National's or the government's push around higher fare box recovery, wasn't it? And so that's the main impact that'll come forward, but we haven't had an update at RTC on that yet. So if that does come through, I'll make sure I'll let you know.
Can I just basically, in regard to My Way too, it's probably a success story, and the fact that its patronage has grown. It's the only service in the country that has, and every other service is actually below pre-COVID levels. So, but it is an expensive service, and I think that's why the government is reluctant to confirm it as a permanent service at the moment, because it will open up the gates. Everybody else will want it. Yeah.
I think the good thing about this forecast is starting to show you how big our problem is, because this 7.7 million deficit is mainly attributed to grants and subsidies, okay, not being received. Your 1 million there, your 2 million there, so there's 6, 7, 8, 9 million there, okay? So effectively, had to receive those subsidies, we would have been running a surplus. What it's telling us, though, is in year 2, some of that will move across, which will save the day, but in year 3, it really hits. And that's where we've got to really start looking at both our revenue lines and our cost lines, you know, and also in sitting inside that deficit is 2.8 million of consultants for our district plan. Now, as soon as you get the district plan out of the road, hopefully that'll abate and be gone. So there's a chunk of it saved, and you've got to remember we're borrowing for that. It's not rate funded. So effectively, if it was rate funded, you'd have another 2.8 sitting in your revenue. So there's some items like that we've got to think through and work our way through. I don't believe you'll get a break even until at least the year after next, if you're lucky, on just a pure OPEX, if you want to actually try and bring your grants and subsidies, you know, as below the line as a surplus. So there's plenty of work to be done in here. You can see that there are some items where we have pulled back consultants. We've still got other activities, 2.7 million. We've got to attack that and look at what exactly is that. So there's further work there. And on the 25th, we'll start going through these items and give you some ideas that management will come up with. And that'll be a mix of levels of service and potential cost savings. And some of those cost savings may be offset by introducing, dare I say it, some more wages and salaries. So, you know, like we do a lot of work with lawyers around property. Now, that's not Elliot's specialty. Do we bring a property lawyer on board? We've got to understand how much are we paying out to lawyers for property. You know, easements, covenants, and all the rest of it. Yeah. So there's plenty of work to be done here, and I think there's plenty of ideas out there to actually try and keep pulling this back.
And just on that note too, Nigel's discipline around legal, I know in the past, you know, would have to get a legal review to, you know, go to the toilet almost. But I mean, this is great because it tells a story of where we've been and where we're going to. But I still expect the discipline should be within the teams, and both consultants and legal should be signed off at the appropriate level, which is SLT, in my view. So no one under SLT should be signing those things off. You should have at least knowledge of it. I'm sure that's probably happening, but that's key. And obviously, it's an easy conversation with. If you're second guessing yourself, you go and have a chat to the chief executive. The key thing that I want around this stuff again, and I know it sits within individual budgets, but I just want to know that and be confident that the SLT's having a good conversation around, hey, someone in X department is using a consultant for this, and so, you know, he or she brings it to the SLT table and has it tested amongst her peers, and give it a real good thrashing to say, is this the best way to achieve an outcome or service? Yeah, and that's the key thing. If you're doing that, then golden.
You explain to me, I see we've got as income finance revenue expected to be 4.283 million, and I assume that the finance, the interest is you're talking about 9.9 million, is that right? Okay, so that means that's almost half of our finance interest. Well, the point is that why have we got that much borrowed? We should only have half the borrowings. We should have that money, instead of getting 3.5 for the money, and we're paying 4.2.
So a chunk of our interest income is actually from TDHL. Just say that quietly. So it's actually not money sitting in the bank. It's not all money sitting in the bank. So it's also our interest rate swaps as well as the income that's coming in from the interest rate swaps. But majority, or half, at least half of it, is from Downlands and TDHL.
And on top of that, you've got to hold so much cash for your covenants.
Yes, you do, from a liquidity perspective.
Next question, which everyone, sorry.
Can I just follow on from that? So where are TDHL at with borrowing direct from LGFA or whatever it is? And will that be reflected in our annual plan? Because otherwise Councillor Booth's going to ask this question every single meeting next year.
Only if they plan to pay us back the $21.5 million they owe us.
I'm just saying quietly, it'd be really helpful if they gave us some indication of what they're doing there, so we get it right in our budget.
So I think that leads on to the next workshop.
The best option for us is they just leave it with us because we're clipping the ticket.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be wanting a higher dividend.
Other thing, I'm just hoping that we're not going to get another surprise where you're going to introduce some vested assets. Well, okay, whereabouts?
And identified them as a single line item,
Okay.
but they're in there. But we definitely know we're getting C play, so that is definitely coming in, and that's about, I'm looking at Amrita, 2 point something million. As for the other vested assets, I've got no idea.
And remember, in this budget, we had to budget them. The auditor said so. And we budgeted 5.3 million. So half is nearly sorted by C play. And we've got to wait and see what else comes our way.
Sorry, so just so we're clear about consult or not consult, what triggers that? Because we've got quite substantial known adjustments in here, and in my gut view is the LTP was pretty rushed through for various reasons, and this is our opportunity to make some good changes, and if that means we have to consult, we have to consult. And I don't think we should use consultation as an excuse not to do what we need to do.
So when we get a view of what the complete picture is, we run it against our engagement and significance policy, and then that has quite good guidelines as to when you consult or don't consult. The general rule of thumb is that annual plans are not a good opportunity to completely relitigate the long-term plan, as you did consult quite extensively on that, and you had hearings and various things. The one thing is that audit have told us that we are unlikely to adopt any of our statutory documents following that if we do consult on this, and there would be a hit to the bottom line from the audit cost from that as well.
So going back to that, if we have to do a long-term plan amendment, then it will need to be audited, consulted and audited. If it's just a variation, then minor variations, once again, if it comes under the level of significance, not changing the levels of service and things like that, then potentially we might consult, but it's more of a, how do you feel about this, or how do you feel about that, as opposed to a complete LTP amendment.
So if we look at, well, we haven't done the other page. If you look at the other page, you've got your LTP and then you've got some known adjustments. While those adjustments look big numbers, they're actually, the revenue's just sliding from one year to another, so I would doubt you'd need to consult on that. And the other two is just fixing the depreciation and dropping the interest, so I doubt you need to consult on that. The next one then is if you drop your interest rates from 12 to 5, would you really consult on that?
No, but what does the law say?
Well,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get an
The law's
understanding
based
of.
around our significance engagement policy, so we kind of get to control the process to some degree. And that's not to say we won't consult on it, it's just we won't do a formal special consultative programme, but we will push the plan out and say, here's our plan for the next year, tell us what you think. And then you guys can take that feedback and your thinking when, at the end of the day, you still have to adopt it or not adopt it. So, I mean, the public will get a view of it, but it's whether we do it to the point of where we have to do a formal process.
To Mr. Trainor's point, just because it's material it doesn't mean it's a fundamental change. For example, the shifting of the theatre from one year to the next is quite material, but that doesn't trigger reconsultation because the community already know all about that, don't they?
And our significance engagement policy is quite wide, so say if it's a change of a strategic asset, that's all of our recreational facilities, it's not just one of them. So it's that kind of, it's quite a high bar.
There are also some stipulations in like revenue and financing policies and what's in our financial strategy too in the LTP. So if we deviate too much from the financial strategy, then we do run into a wee bit of trouble.
So the other piece that needs to be, we need to do the next workshop to determine what bottom line are you looking for, because if you're looking for a bottom line closer to the 6 million and you still want to keep the rates at 5%, then we'll have to find 4 million of savings. Now, whether that triggers a consultation or not, I don't know, and it probably depends on what they are, I think. So we've got a bit of work to do yet.
Oh, sorry, Nigel.
No, you're right. Yeah, one more, Councillor Booth, and then we'll get back. We'll pause, do THL.
Okay, this might, just flagging it, last year when we did the rates increase, it was supposed to be 15% or somewhere about there. 12 this year. But anyway, I got a rates increase of 20%, and some other people got rates increases of 2%. So actually, have we addressed that? Because now's the time to sort that out, so as everyone is going to get the right amount.
So the 15% is the average.
That's just...
Your property must have gone up a huge amount compared to the person over here who got 2%.
I'm sorry, it hasn't. Yeah, you're not happy, so...
You must live in a fancy neighbourhood. But I think what we didn't articulate well was the movement of some of the cost in rubbish, etc., which did affect general rates and averages and what have you. So we can do that better. But what we'll do is we'll pause now for a few minutes while we can change over. So we're going to go to our SOI conversation workshop with TDHL. So we'll just pause for 2 minutes and we'll start back in a moment.